Okay. Are you ready, Corporal? Jolly good. Let me just find the page. Alas, I could relate it from memory, but it's not what it used to be. Too much rum, I think. Anyway, here we go. So this is a little story relating to an incident in Cryche in Derbyshire. I don't know if any of you are familiar with the place. There's a bit of a tramway museum there. You can go wander around, and there's some beautiful walks in the countryside around there. And Miss Bell, who is, of course, from Newcastle area, she calls it Crap Beamish, which is rather mean, I feel, but there we go. Anyway, here's a little tale of what happened that day. It was a pleasant summer's day as we walked in the relative cool of the tree canopy, high above the village of Cryche. The ladies had gone on ahead of us somewhat, leaving us three chaps to wander idly behind them, towards a stoutly built wooden bridge that crossed a dry stream bed strewn with rocks. Corporal Ash had, with his usual youthful exuberance and endless energy, dashed off to explore beneath that very bridge. As August and I continue our earnest discussion about coffee and tea, he, damnably ignorant traditionalist that he was, continued to insist tea was superior, despite my well-presented and superior arguments to the contrary. My patience with him was beginning to fray somewhat, as it always did, in fact. We had barely traversed across the length of the bridge when there was a most terrible commotion behind us. Turning in surprise, and, I confess, ready with some harsh words relating to whatever calamity Corporal Ash had found himself in, we both halted in our tracks and stared in bewilderment as the corporal inexplicably rose above the side of the bridge and a shower of earth and stones. It took a few seconds for us to grasp the fact that the lad was clutching for dear life to the head of a monstrously ugly troll of considerable size and, it seemed, most disagreeable temperament. Now, I'm a monster hunter of considerable experience. I've hunted in all terrains in the most intolerable of climates. I've seen horrors that have driven lesser men insensible, or sent them into terrified and unreasoned flight. Yet, I am not ashamed to say that even I was taken aback to see the young corporal desperately clutching onto a large troll's ears as it rode from the ground, its hide crackling, fizzing, and smoking madly in the speckled sunlight filtering through the trees, and its small, malicious black eyes rolling wildly beneath its heavy brows. Even the most stupid of trolls will not venture out in sunlight, even beneath a heavy tree canopy, as it is as well known to them as it is to any half-wit Welshman, local twist there, that trolls calcify and turn to stone in full daylight. Yet here it was, complete with a reluctant and uncomfortable-looking young man, perched precariously upon its head. I swiftly recovered my wits and immediately reached for my trusty volcanic 41 with a calm and well-practiced cross-belly draw, only to realise almost immediately that the damnable thing was full of standard munition that was no use against such a beast. A troll's hide is simply too tough and thick to be breached by standard issue munitions. I may as well have used a pea shooter, or perhaps resorted to using a small knife for the cutting of fruit. Cursing my poor luck, I calmly shouted for August, who, true to form, had been hitherto stood slack-jawed and gaping, to distract the beast, as I began twisting and turning, trying to dislodge the unfortunate corporal from its foul head. To be fair to August, if I must, he shook himself from his insensibility and began whooping and waving his arms in a most irritating manner, shouting, "Oi, trolley," or some other such inane phrase, over and over again, as he capered around the bridge like a drunken marionette. Rolling my eyes at August's ludicrous, yet, I confess, effective, distractions, I swiftly twisted the underbarrel magazine of the volcanic and ejected the standard 41 cartridges onto the path, and began loading the special gun-cotton rounds perfected by Professor Septimus, one by one, as I stepped back onto the bridge. 1, 2, 3, "Oi, trolley, trolley, troll!" 4. I shouted super encouraging words to Corporal Ash to hang on, as the safest place to be at the present time was, and incredible as it seemed, atop the beast's head, and pushed more explosive shells into the spring-loaded magazine. 5, 6, woo-hoo, wee-hee-hee, 7. The troll, meanwhile, had overcome its initial surprise at August's baffling display of tomfoolery, and roared loudly as it prepared to advance on the unfortunate buffoon taunting it upon the bridge. The full wrath of an enraged troll is not a pleasant thing to experience firsthand, particularly if you are the main focus of the creature's ire. So I fully expected August to freeze in terror and soil himself, or perhaps even to simply turn and run screaming. Yet, to my eternal surprise, he did not. as the beast took its first stride towards August, he did no more than calmly place his feet firmly apart, and with a great flourish and cry of "How's that?" lifted his kilt to his chin. I remain eternally grateful to whatever powers watched over me that day that I was in entirely the wrong, or should I say right, angle, not to see what horrors had revealed to the troll at that precise moment. I still feel for the poor beast to this very day, if truth be told. But whatever it was that August had beneath his petticoat was enough to stop the troll dead in abject, slack-jawed horror. Quickly recovering my wits, I yelled for Corporal Ash to jump and step forward, gun in hand, just as the intrepid corporal popped up on the creature's head, looking for as convenient a landing spot as he could hope for under the circumstances. Raising the gun in a smooth and fluid motion and suppressing my natural instinct to go for a headshot, I aimed for the huge barrel chest of our foe. The crack of the gun was swift, followed by a loud bang as the explosive detonated, showering us in calcified hide. I cranked again. As the troll recovered from its stupefaction and bellowed, I took a step forward and fired again. Crank, step, fire, crank, step, fire. Each shot exploded on the beast's chest as it roared in rage. Corporal Ash, judging the moment perfectly, leapt from his precarious perch into the relative comfort of a nearby rhododendron bush. His landing was not quite as graceful, but a quick glance was enough to confirm his relative safety and assure me that my quarry was now entirely my main focus. Cranking the loading lever again seemed to break that frozen moment of time, and the beast bellowed and charged. I took aim and waited just a second longer as it closed. I fired. Boom! Misfire, dear boy. Allow me. Where were we? I took aim and waited just a second longer as it closed. I fired. Boom! Oh, misfire. Bagger it. Bagger it, I say. Anyway, use your imagination, I'm sure you can. I cranked and fired again. Both shots took the beast full in the mouth, and the dull explosions, barely a second apart, shattered the troll's head in a cloud of calcified hide, skull fragments, and gore that rained down upon us. The troll fell crashing against the bridge before me and slid back into the dry stream bed, dragging a good side portion of the bridge handrail with it as it fell. Rocks tumbled and rolled, and then all fell silent. Then at last only silence. Now, outside of an exclusive Parisian maison de tolerance, or a well-stocked bar and a reasonably expensive gentleman's club, there are few things more sublime upon this very earth in our short and frenzied lives that leave a man as satisfied, content, and so utterly complete as a successful conclusion of a hunt. The great beast conquered before you, the smell of gun smoke still on the air, and the calm and silence of that almost divine moment of sublime euphoria and moral repletitude, of which every split second should be savoured and... "Is it dead, then?" inquired August, tossing a rock at the prone troll. "Can someone help me out of this bloody laurel bush?" inquired Corporal Ash. "It's a rhododendron," I corrected him, as I wiped greenish gore off my clothes. "And don't curse." It was fortunate I'd taken Carruthers' advice and worn the leather tunic that day. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Woo-hoo!